Hey guys, today we're going to be learning about viruses and how they kind of take over your body. They're not actually living, but they need your cells in order to reproduce. Okay, so now we're looking at what do they actually look like. So in the first one, you can see there, oops, there, uh, um, it looks almost like an alien or something, right? So it has this thing at the very top, that blue looking thing, that's the capsid. So that's it almost sounds like capsule, so it's enclosing that inside of it. And then in the circular one, and this is what like the coronavirus looks more like this one, your capsid is surrounded by another lipid um, covering, but your capsid is that light blue strip. So these guys, they have nucleic acid, which is DNA or RNA. So they're going to have one or the other. They're not going to have both. We and our cells, we have both, but they don't. Um, so yeah, they're surrounded by the capsid. Um, and some viruses have a lipid envelope. So that's what I was talking about, the yellow part there. Okay, so uh, you're supposed to draw, well, you don't have to do that. All cells, like our cells, have both DNA and RNA. All of our cells have ribosomes. And remember when we were studying organelles, ribosomes make proteins. And all cells are surrounded with a membrane. So when we studied cell membranes, remember it's covered by proteins and lipids. So they cannot, viruses cannot make baby viruses because they're not living. They need a host cell to make more copies of its proteins and DNA or RNA in order to reproduce. So this is why they're considered not living, because they cannot reproduce on their own. Viruses use transcription and translation, which is part of protein synthesis, which we are going to be learning later, um, to make these proteins. But they use the host cell's ribosomes and polymers, which we're going to be talking about later, in order to do this, because they do not have these things. So here's a pop question. What two biomolecules are viruses most made of? A, nucleic acid and protein, B, nucleic acid and lipid, or C, protein and lipid, or D, carbohydrate and lipid. Okay, so now we're looking at how are viruses treated. Um, so viruses cannot be treated with antibiotics. That's why we're having such a hard time with the spread of the coronavirus right now, because we cannot give you antibiotics for it because it's a virus. It's not living. That's a huge difference. So antibiotics will kill something that's living, um, but not something like viruses that aren't living. So they have to be prevented by vaccines. So if you could think of like the flu shot you get every year, or you got your chicken pox shot. Um, as you know, there's not a vaccine yet for the coronavirus, and that's why we're having the problems that we are. And it's spreading more because nobody can have this vaccine yet because it's not made yet. Oops, sorry. So how do they reproduce? So reproduce means to make more of a species, right? So, you know, every living thing makes more, right? So, uh, dogs have puppies, people have babies, so reproduction is just making more. So the virus, since it's not living and it has to use a host cell in order to multiply, there's two types of cycles. There's your lytic cycle and your lysogenic cycle. So I want you to think about the lytic cycle. See how it has the TIC, tick, 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 and then the lysogenic lie, right? So think of those keywords when we go through this. Okay, so we have the lytic cycle, and you can see how it says lit tick. So we think of that as tick, tick, boom, right? Because this is going to explode right away. So our coronavirus is happening right away. So if you get infected, you can see from the little pictures here that the virus attaches to the cell. It injects its DNA into the cell. Then it starts taking over, the ribosomes and stuff to make its parts. And then it reassembles, and then it bursts out of the cell. So here are the different stages. The virus attaches. Oh, look at how, isn't that cute? Attaches to the cell, and it's going to inject its DNA into the cell. And then the virus DNA or RNA will direct synthesis of new viruses, meaning it's taking over the DNA to send messages to the ribosomes to make new parts for assembly of this virus. Look at that, isn't that adorable? Okay, then hundreds of viruses are made inside the host cell. So all these little viruses get together and they reassemble themselves, right? So they've made their parts in our cells, ribosomes, and now they're reassembling themselves. See, moves, cool. So the next thing is the virus breaks open and destroys the host cell. So like all those are going to blow up, and if you look, yeah, isn't that cute? So they break out of that cell and destroy the cell. So each one of those new viruses are going to then go to other cells and infect them. So there's a YouTube video here. Let's go to that. Okay, so we can see from this video how this kind of works, right? Let's see. So the lysogenic cycle, on the other hand, if we look at the word lysogenic, it says lie in the beginning. So it's going to lie and wait. So it's going to be in your cells, but it's not going to be active. So it stays part of the DNA. I got to change it. Of the host cell, and it's replicated along with the host. So for instance, when your cells go through mitosis, which is cell division, that virus is going to go into the new cell that it's created. So every time the host cell divides, so does the DNA for that virus. So here are the stages of the lysogenic. So it comes in and it attaches to the host cell, and then isn't that adorable? and then it's going to inject the virus into the cell. 3, the viral nucleic acid is becomes part of that host cell. So if you see, look down there, there's red and blue within that DNA. So the blue part is your virus. So you can see how it's become part of that DNA. So that when a host cell divides through cellular cell division, you can see here how we got 2 new cells with that same DNA. So if you look at this, it divides and all that virus is part of that host cell's DNA. So it divides with it. So no new viruses are made here. They're just within those cells. So they can go from that stage of being lysogenic, meaning it's just lying low in that cell, to becoming lytic, where it's going to tick, tick, boom, right? So out of those cells, it's going to explode. So an example of this is like HIV. It's a lysogenic virus that becomes activated into the lytic cycle. So people could have HIV and show no symptoms whatsoever. And then something might happen and it goes into that lytic cycle. So when HIV does enter the lytic cycle, what it does is it attacks white blood cells, which is a key ingredient. That's why so many AIDS victims died of like pneumonia and stuff like that, because it attacks your white blood cells, which attacks your immune system. So here's a little picture of it, the lytic cycle and the lysogenic cycle. Here's kind of another image on how it gets in and what it does and stuff. You can look at the different steps it takes. Here's a thing on West Niles. And viruses can cause mutations. So because they changed your DNA, they've become part of your DNA. So we have our review questions. So you should answer these questions in your notebook. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.